Okay, so let's get started. And this is a recording from the Zoom session. And so what I will do today is I'll give you a little bit lecture, and we will go to the UIS Citrix virtual desktop to show you some of the important technology knowledge, if you want to call that, using SFTP and using the web server and building a little website on the web page and finally make our PHP scripting language work as a middleware connecting to database and build a simple report. And the tutorial is module 5A, that is your assignment number 9. And so let me kind of go through assignment, the module 5A first, and to give you a little bit introduction about what you are getting into in terms of the learning goals. So as I mentioned earlier, this is about the database connectivity, and meaning that the database system need to be connected to other environment. And actually, the one of the architecture chart has been presented to you in chapter number 1 already, explaining how the end user interact with database system through the database application. So the one of the job of database administrator is to provide support for the developers to do this kind of thing. And the boundary is rather blurred because in many organizations you need to have the knowledge of both sides, the database side, how to manage the database management system, as well as the knowledge of the developer, some programming language knowledge, and knowledge about the architecture, the network environment, Windows Server, Linux Server, that sort of thing. So it's a tremendous amount of knowledge and very technical, I would say. And this lectures give you one example. As a matter of fact, you have already learned the entire process in your previous assignment, which you used the AirPack to build well, AirPack itself is a web server, and it is a application server. So it's a web server and application server built together. And within there, you use their feature. You can create user. You can manage a user as well. So you create a end user, which is usually we consider as the report consumer. And in that case, in that assignment, if you remember, you have to build a user called MIS542, and that is a user you created. And we haven't discussed how to fine tune and manage the user yet, but that will come up. I'm actually building a new tutorial using the new environment specific for that purpose. And we have to go back to the Oracle 18C or 12C enterprise server to learn that part, because we do not have administration right on the APAC server. So we'll see how that goes. But hopefully it'll give you some overview about user management and privilege and the role assignment. So that's that part of the learning. And this part that we, for the assignment, you need to have a little bit programming knowledge. I believe all of you have, because you have taken the programming prerequisite already. 1 or 2 programming language will be good enough. And you need to have some website building HTML coding skill, know something about the tag, the HTML tag, because the PHP working on the website environment does require you to use HTML to format your output. So that is the part. And you need to, of course, need to have the SQL knowledge, which you should have after taking the exam and all the assignment you have done. And there are a lot of words that if you go to the slide, I would encourage you to go through the slide by yourself to explain. And a lot of these slides explain why we're using certain technology and why this tutorial is assigned. And we are learning, in this case, again, database connectivity to be sure. And there are some reasons that why I use PHP. And most important reason is it's open source. And me, your professor here, is a believer of the open source world, and it's much easier if we do something like using Visual Studio.net, but that environment is a proprietary company owned environment, so I tend to avoid that environment, and especially when we choose the database server, Oracle is our database server, then the Visual Studio or Microsoft environment does not work it still can work very well, but it does not work naturally with Oracle environment. And PHP, MySQL, Oracle, and PHP by itself is an open source environment, but it worked pretty well with Oracle environment. So they're going to be using the PHP, and by the way, it's very easy to learn. So you can, with some programming training, you can easily read the program and understand what they're talking about. In this lecture, I'd like to go through the program from the slide to give you some overview of what PHP look like, not PhD. So typical environment, right? So this is a typical package of environment in a different company or different ecosystem has sort of like default. That's what chapter 10A, B, and C is all about, introducing to you the ecosystem of these environments. Now, in the PHP environment, the natural combination is the following. You have something what we call the Apache web server, which is another open source web server. And usually Apache web server is installed on Linux or Unix environment. And Linux and Unix are also free open source. And you have the open source MySQL database provide the engine to manage data and data structure. So in a way that the database is if you recall your knowledge about system architecture, we usually talk about layer design, right? So 3-tier design, for example, you probably learned there several times in our curriculum or in other undergraduate programs. Say, okay, 3-tier design. What does that mean by 3-tier design? 3-tier design, you have a tier of a data layer. You have a tier of application layer. And then finally, you have a tiers of a user interface layer. So user interface, application, and database are 3 sort of separate layer and on a network, and each one of this work together become your application. And on the internet environment, you have to put one more support service in there. It's called the web service environment. So the everything you do can be rendered through a web page or a web environment. So when you go type in the URL, it is searchable on the internet. So you add one more layer there. So you have user interface, which is on your own desktop. It can be accessed through a browser or a customized application on your desktop or on your cell phone. And the application layer will be some program running on the server. In this case, we'll be using PHP to write this application layer. And you have this web server that's already installed and provide the web access using Apache. And you have the database. In the typical environment will be MySQL. But in our example here, we will replace MySQL with Oracle because that's what we learned in this particular class. The difference between Oracle and MySQL, I would say it's minimal because that's a benefit of a relational database. And definition or the so-called standard, SQL standard, try to standardize all the database management environment, including Microsoft, Oracle, and Oracle own Oracle database as well as MySQL. So both of them are Oracle, and including the Sybase, including the Teradata, all these database companies, all following the same standard. So they are all very similar at the fundamental layer, but there are main difference. We have seen a lot of them already in this class in terms of the option that you have in the select statement, for example, or different keywords and command line when you try to use it. But the majority part of that is kind of similar. To get ready to work on this, we're going to be looking at this later, but we have already in the virtual machine installed Notepad++, so we're going to be using that to edit our program. So let's take a look at the PHP program a little bit now. And so this is the sample. This is called a Hello World PHP program that you learn every programming language, the first program you learn is Hello World. So this is Hello World. And as you can see that the server we are using here, the lower part of the slide show you where the server is. You see the server URL is what? uisacad5.uis.edu, and then you have, and in this case, I use my account to do the demo. So you have twang22, that is my account, and you have the program running after that account. So that will be a typical. So basically, what it does is that we're going to be uploading this program called Oracle PHP-1.php, this little program, to the web server. And this web server is right here, uisacad5.us.edu. And once your program is on the web server, you can access that program through the URL, like this structure. Right? And you can rename and using alias, but that is not a topic we're discussing here. So let's leave as this is actually a default format for a URL when you install the Apache server. Right? So the program, the Oracle PHP-1 program looks like the one on upper portion of this page. And if you have some training of HTML, it look awfully like a HTML page, because on the first line it says what? H3. H is what? The formatting tag says header number 3, right? The third layer, third indented layer of a header. So it's probably, it depends on how your environment define H3, that will show up different font and different font size. And then you have a P, that's obviously paragraph, and you kind of turn a line on the page and you put a URL there. And A tag is another HTML tag showing up as a URL, a clickable link. And you have this words in there. And finally, you have this part, the question mark PHP and another question mark to close it. This is something what we call embedded program. So you embed the program language actually inside the HTML tag. So when a application server or web engine read until line number 3, they will try to find the application server called PHP and throw the control to the PHP server. And once the PHP server finish the processing and will return some value, and the web server will continue to render the formatting of the web page. So that's how it's kind of like a web page working together with PHP server, and dynamic content will be provided by PHP server, and web page will provide the static content. That is line number 1 and 2. So line number 3 to 5 will be dynamic content, and using dynamic content and static content together, you have a rather dynamic report. And so a typical practice is using HTML to format your document, using the style sheet, a CSS file, to format your document so your document or the website look rather consistent and pretty. But the data or the dynamic part will be rendered by a program. In this case, the dynamic part is rendered by PHP. It can also be rendered by a program like JavaScript, and that will be introducing module 5b. Now, in this particular semester, module 5b is optional, so it just I just leave it there. So for those of you who are interested to use JavaScript, and it will help you to do exactly what we do in Apex environment and in different technology using JavaScript as the graphic tool to build a chart. And so that chart.js you will see in your module 5 is for that particular purpose. So that will be the structure of the PHP program. So it's basically an embedded language in a web page. And when web servers see that embedded program, it will be handled by the application server, and the PHP application server. And the important part we're doing here in this particular course here is that the dynamic part is coming out of database server. So we use PHP application engine to provide, this is the keywords now called connectivity to the database. So using PHP program, issue query to database. So instead of you issue the query, the PHP program will issue the query. So whatever the query you provide to PHP program, it will be sent it to the to the, uh, to the database and get a result. And the result coming back, and in my example, I use PHP program to rearrange the result so you can see the result in organized format. So that's providing so the whole training or the structure is as simple as that. And in the second program, I call this Oracle PHP-2.Oracle. And all these, you can just really understand it through my lecture. But you are welcome to try though, by the way, right? So there are some problems here. I kind of explain here. But don't worry about the problem because I will give you a sample program. You can always copy this, what we call the connections string line or program to your whatever the program you want to build and try to test it. The key of the Oracle PHP 2 program is on line number 9. Right? Line number 9 is giving you, well, if you read this line, it looked like something about username, password. I see this is my username, this is my password, and this is the server name. So, and you look at the function, it says something about log on, and you can actually guess what it means. Oracle, C probably stands for a connection or connectivity. Yeah, you're exactly right. So that's the Oracle connectivity interface, log on. OCI logo. So that function provides connection to Oracle database management system. And this little function in PHP program work with Oracle version from 8G to the most modern one. So it's a working program. It's keeping updating by both Oracle and open source environment here. So this one, this little line will make a connection from the application server, the PHP engine, to the database. And again, this in this case, the database server is oracle.uis.edu, and try to and establish a connection first. So the whole line, if you use analogies of network communication, it's kind of like you are open up a asynchronous connection line to the database, and the line is open. Now you are ready to go. And line number 15 is close the connection. So you on line number 9, you call the server, and on line number 15, you close this or hang up the calling. So that's what's going on there. And it's everything in between will just be programming. It's just programming side you do, and this is something what we call the error handling. So if something goes wrong in program, you have to provide user with feedback. That's error handling. So again, we are going to be looking at the detail, but one little understanding about the PHP program can be explained here. Line number 9, the equal sign, or you can call using the programming terminology, is that the return value. Right? Every function, once you run a function, it will return something. So when you connect it to a database, use a function connected to the database, it must return a value. And this value is usually a reference number. And this reference number will tell the server where is the database and when did I open up the connection, that sort of thing. So that is a set of information about the connection. And we use this and variable is actually with the dollar sign. See everything in PHP. If you see a dollar sign in front of the word, it means that the particular word is a variable. So we create a variable called connection, and using that variable to capture all the connection information, reference information for a return by the OCI logout, right? So that's what this program is all about. And this connection program later will be used to make sure that you can connect to the right database and issue the command. So that's what's going on. In detail, or actually more explanation about what I just said there has been explained in the slide. So we'll go a little bit quicker here. So this is how it looked like if you uploaded number 2 there, and in the error handling part of the program, in line number 13, if the connection is successful, you will see you have connected to UIS Oracle database. If you try this little program by yourself, and you may see line number 11, could not make a connection. So this is actually not generated by PHP, it's generated by this program here. And so if you run that correctly, you will see on your web page very easily a line you have connected to UIS Oracle database. Right? So that's, you provide this. Right? So that's what the program looks like when it's running on a web page. And the screen capture, as you can probably see, is obviously very old. This is coming from earlier version of the Microsoft Explorer. So probably Windows 7 version. I didn't change this for a while. All right, so that's the Oracle PHP 2 example. And this one, Oracle PHP 3 now, or it's actually 2 or 3. And yeah, -3 is an important one, right? And again, I will not explain the program detail. From line number 9 to line number 13 are the same program as Oracle PHP-2. But starting from line number 15 to 20, let me see, 25 are the heart, the core of the little reporting tool that we have here. And the most important line is line number 15. Line number 15, it has something you should be familiar with now. There is in the red double quotation mark, select table name from user tables. That is actually coming from one of your previous assignment. Forgot which one is that, but one of the assignment asks you to issue that particular statement. This is actually a statement try to, using SQL select statement, try to find out how many table you have in your database. Throughout the semester, we've created many tables on your database server, regardless it's Apex or in the SQL developer, the Oracle Enterprise 12c environment on UIS server. So this is actually one of those statements. So basically what line number 15 is, we're going to be creating a string variable called SQL query. And this query will be sent it to number 16. And number 16 has a function called OCI parse. Parse is, again, another programming concept. It's the first step in the compiling program compiling process. Parse is a programming language engine. Try to check to see if you have any grammar error in your programming language. So basically what you're doing there is we're trying to check to see is there anything wrong with your query. And so there are two arguments. One is here, it's called a connection. The other is called a SQL query, right? So it's pretty much just sending the query to the database to see if your query is readable, or is the query correct? And this query is correct, so it will return something, and the something will be another reference, and this reference will go through the program. This is actually a loop to create a list using this OCI execute and that sort of program, and generate a little report from the query result. So from line number 15 to line number 25, whenever you need to use this program, all you need to do as a database developer is to provide this query. Once you put a query in there, whatever query you put in there, the report will be dynamically generated through the program. And this program using HTML, if you see that HTML content in there. Line number 25, you see that there is something called echo. Echo is kind of like print in Visual Basic program. It's try to display some information. So in PHP, it's called echo. So we are printing out HTML tag. So the whole program is using database connection, using the programming language and the HTML tag to generate an output. And finally, you close out with a HTML. And the program part is from line number 8 to line number 28. you see that question mark PHP, question mark, closing the parenthesis or arrowhead. That is where the program is controlled. And there's some explanation. I did that already. And this is the result. And this is the result telling us how many table I have. In this case, my database, my TWANG22 database on Oracle server. How many table I have listed? This artist, customer, NDX. These are the textbook table. If you kind of go through all this textbook, and in previous chapter we use this trends work. If you recall that we have this gallery example that we try to keep track of the transaction, the work, the artist. So those are the table that we're using in there. All right, so that's what this program is all about. Again, we're not going to be if you have time, feel free to try. It's very fun. I find programming is to me is very, writing or testing program is kind of like watching a fish tank. It feels like you're doing nothing, but it's actually very calming. Very, what do you call this? Has that calming effect. If you see your program, if that program runs, even though you just type in line by line from a sample program, you feel achieved. Some sort of happiness will come your way. So if your program works after you go through this trouble testing it, and that will be very fun things to do, right? So that's the thing. And PHP or Oracle PHP-4 is building on the previous program, but adding a little bit more. This little bit more doing there is this. In PHP-3 sample program, we generate an output that look like a single column. It's not a table, because the reason it's a single column, not a table, is because the program has only one while statement. While is a loop. One loop. One loop create one dimension. Two loop create two dimension. To generate a table, you need to have a double loop or nested loop in programming logic. And going back to again, without troubling you too much, in programming we call this two-dimensional arrays or linked list or two-dimensional linked list. And when we create an array, that's one-dimensional. So if you look at this result, this is one array in programming terminology. But if you want to create a table, like Excel spreadsheet table, you need two dimension. That's two-dimension array. So that's what we're going to be doing in Oracle PHP-4, this little program. So the majority part is the same. Line number 15, you see that little query is try to select every column from artist table. And the difference is coming out in the next screenshot. From line number 27 to line 43 is a double loop, two-dimensional formatting program. And the first loop is the while loop from line number 27. The second loop will be the for loop inside if there are actually two for loops. The first for loop is for creating header. The second for loop is creating the columns and the row in your, actually not row, row in your table. So the second loop is in 38. So the nested loop, one is for loop, the other is while loop, will generate that table structure. And as you can probably see that this program also uses a lot of HTML tag, /table, /tr, /td. TD is table divider. TR is table row, so that you have divider and row, you have column. TH is the table header, so that's what this little program is actually all about. Generate a table and try to create a two-dimensional report from the data. So this is what this result looks like. PHP-4, the artist table now will be show up very similarly like what you see on a management studio or SQL developer sort of database environment. Or I see that some other tool like Toad that we use. You will see this result in the any database management environment when you issue query. In Apex, we use the SQL command. You will see this result. But now this is the result generated by the program and display on web page, right? And the whole purpose of this going through all this trouble is to create connection and make sure it's generate the result from a web page, not to only to your management environment, right? Because end user, by definition, will not be able to see your he or she should not be able to use your developer's account and see all these little dirty laundry behind the engine. So that's what's going on. And the rest of the slide is actually going through the process instead of only taking the report, connecting to database, taking the data and generate a report. This one generate a ad hoc report. So the user can provide input and to insert data and generate a report or do something or customize your output. So it becomes interactive. But for assignment number 9, I will not ask you to do this part. But again, it will be something that fun to do. And let me explain a little bit very quickly, just to let you know what you get into here and figure out what's going on later if you encounter the environment, need to do something like this. So this is actually an HTML form. What this form does is that if you see line number 12, right, line number 12, there is a keyword says, or sometimes we call this attribute. The attribute action. Action is what? Action is a PHP program. It's a file name. So what it does is that in this form, we're going to be collecting some information from a user. And the button is a submit button. So when the user submit, the submission, all the data will be passed to that little program called Oracle PHP 5. And then Oracle PHP 5 will take over, taking the user input data and process the data and do whatever necessary and generate the result using that little program, right? And this is the form look like, very simple HTML form. And I use the artist table as an example to generate this little form. You can type in information there, and you can generate an input. In that example, is just creating a new artist in the table. So I created a new artist code table. That's me. Birth year, no, I'm not born in '97, so I'll be too young. Actually, I'd be weird born in '97. All right, so that is pretty much what the PHP program is, and on your learning module, I have give you Oracle PHP 5 already, and we'll take a look at that particular file. And now we can exit the tutorial. There are still more. There are still more slides telling you what's there, what to do, but that's enough. All right, so that's moving to the actual environment and try to see what we can do with it. All right. So this is, we're going to be using UIS virtual desktop to showcase how do we go through the entire process and build your web page. Now, before we do anything here, let me try to show you how the output look like on my web browser. So I'm on a Google Chrome web browser. If I type in the URL HTTP, actually type in uisacad.uis.edu, and this is another student's. So probably this one. This is 6. All right, so this is not all for PHP 6, but you see similar. We use the Titanic table, simple table to showcase how you do that. And so this is coming from, as you can see, from spring 2018 semester. So I didn't change the code just to show you how it looked like. So this is, and the table look like somewhat count 1, and you have crew. This 1 is a missing. That is actually a data quality problem. We have 1 count of this passenger. We don't know who they are, and we have 1 first class, second class, crew. How many people are in each class? And you can probably imagine now what kind of query we need to issue to the database and get this particular result. And so that's the end result you're going to be seeing in your assignment. All right, so let's go into our environment, and we're going to be using, as always, Oracle Windows 10 GIS environment, and give you a little bit of time for it to load. Today around relatively slow. We'll see what's going on. Let's give it a few seconds until it load up in the environment. All right. I should have loaded this environment before I started class, because that was making some tea for myself. So I'm going to be drinking some tea. Clear my throat. So every fall season in the year, I usually have a minor allergy, hay fever, and I do have a little bit today. And at the time of pandemic, it's kind of worrisome because you don't know if it's hay fever, allergy, or virus. Okay, so we are almost ready. Good. So that's going to this environment, right? So this is now the entire process. The first thing we need to do to prepare the environment, and of course we already have, if you recall some of the technology we use this class, the PuTTY environment. The PuTTY is used for connecting to the server, doing the thing, so you have that experience. And you can actually use PuTTY, but PuTTY is not the best tool to use. The thing we're trying to do here is we are trying to upload our program to a server. So the first thing we need to do is to connect to a server. And how do you exchange files or connect to a server? The typical solution is using a little program called FTP. But of course, if you use the environment like VisualStudio.net, VisualStudio.net has the natural connection. You can actually connect to a server through VisualStudio.net, and the FTP will be established between them. And for those of you who have built website before and using technology like Adobe Creative Cloud or Adobe Creative Service, and you know that whenever you make connection to a web server, you have to select the method of file transfer, and typically it will be FTP. In our web environment, this is the UIS ACAD server. The protocol used for file connection is SFATP. Right? It's not FTP. It's SFATP. And usually we connect to a SFTP server through a FTP client. Right? So if you go to any Google environment, you search for FTP client. So again, FTP is file transfer protocol, FTP, right? And you see a lot of free tools out there, and then one of the first one is FileZilla, and this was one that I used before 2018, and but in 2018 something happened on our server. Our web administrator told me that we have some virus showing up in here, and one of the reasons was that some of my former students download and use the FileZilla FTP, and somehow got installed virus in there. And I tried this again today, and it messed up with my virtual desktop. So we, after 2018, have switched to a program called Switch. And this is called a Switch is again another simple program called Switch FFTP, SFTP. And you can see there something about, and there's a website called switch-sftp.org. And what this little program do is that it's a plugin program, right? It's a very simple, free, open source plugin program. What it will do is it will convert your file manager into an FTP server. Right? So that's what we're going to be using, and I'll show you how to use it. And first thing we need to do is, for you as well me, is you need to download this program there. And the download site is SourceForge download site. You will wait until like a few seconds for it to download, and it's download automatically to your download folder. Whenever you go to this open source website, you have to be very careful, because this is where the security problem will come in, the virus will come in, or unwelcome program will come in, and they will set up a lot of trap to trap you into downloading unnecessary stuff. For example, you see that on top of the advertisement panel, that earlier you see there is a start button there, very big start button. If you click there, you'll be forced to download another program. It may run automatically. Right? So be careful. Don't fall into that trap, clicking on the thing that does not. I didn't do anything. You see the page automatically refresh and try to capture information from me. So be very careful of using that. But it's already downloaded to my download folder. From the browser, I can see from the left corner in the Chrome browser. So the first thing we do is to install this program and run in this program. And it asks you to see if you want to run as an administrator. Say yes, and it will install the program. Right. And let's install the program. Accept. Next. Install on this folder program file switch. And install. Right. Done. Okay, and when you finish, you finish. This virtual environment we're using in the UIS Citrix server, I don't know how many of you have noticed already. This is not like it looks like our typical computer desktop, but it is not. Say for example, one of the things you try to find is called File Manager. You keep searching the menu, you cannot find File Manager, and this is because that in the virtual machine setting, we can actually customize to block some of the user privilege of using something. And this is one of the things, because the original setup of our virtual desktop do not want to download large files or save any file on the virtual desktop. So the file manager is actually disabled, so that you will not moving a lot of file. But there are always a way to get around. And in this case, using the recycle bin, you can go into the file manager. The recycle bin is actually a file manager there. So once you get into the file manager, go into this PC there. Right? Click on this PC, and in addition to some of the regular thing you see on your typical computer, you have a new network drive here called Switch showing up here. Right? So this is what the installation has done. It create a connection, a network connection to somewhere. In this case, it's a temporary plug-in connection. It does not connect into anything yet. So when you go into this particular drive, you see it's blank. There's nothing there because you haven't connected to anything. To make this little program connect to a server, you need to do some configuration. So in this case, we're going to be using, on top of it, you have some new functions showing up. One of the functions is called add SFTP connection. Click on this one. I'll move the configuration screen here. Let's just call this UIS ACAD server. UIS ACAD server, the host name is uisacad.uis.edu. And the user in this case will be your username, and I'm using mine. And you need to, in this case, very importantly, put your path in here. If you do not put a path in here, you will lost in the Linux system. You don't know where to go. So, but it's very simple. Just simply put a slash and say home, and your username in this case will be my username here, right? And don't put another slash here, and let's create a connection. And the connection now is look like a network neighbors on your File Explorer. And now we can make connection. Double click on the connection. It asks you for a password. this password is your UIS email password. That's your enterprise account password, because the Linux server take your user privilege from our window or regular email connection or enterprise server. So it's not Oracle, right? It's not something we do, because we're not dealing with Oracle server. We're dealing with Linux server. And this is your UIS. I have to be very careful because I usually type it incorrectly, especially on my son's computer. This is a gaming computer. I a lot of time typing the wrong key on this. Let's see. Okay, hopefully I type in the password correctly. Yes, I did. Great. All right, so what you see here is I use my account connecting to my web storage places on the UIS server. If you do the same thing as I'm doing here, you probably will see something rather blank, nothing but one of the folders called public HTML. And this folder is important. Public HTML is where the Apache web server search for to render the web page. Right? So all the web page have to be uploaded to that public HTML. So when you upload to public HTML, it's visible to the web server and it can be rendered through an URL. So what we are doing now is that we're going to be doing everything in the public HTML. So you go into public HTML. When you open this folder for the first time, it's blank because you have nothing in there. Because I have done this for at least 5 years, so I have a lot of stuff in there. And because I keep a lot of information there, I don't want to destroy it, and I just keep using it. And what I would do here is that because now you're in a file manager already. So whatever you're doing here, you move the file, you transfer the file. So when I say, for example, the program we're looking at is called Oracle PHP number 5. Let's drag and drop this to the environment here. And this little program now is already downloaded from the server to my virtual desktop here. So this program, this is down. So if you do the same thing, you take this and upload back, it's uploading, right? So when you move file between the folder, it's actually downloading and uploading. And this is again through SFTP. By the way, a little trivia from the notation here. SFTP, S stands for security. So SFTP is more secure than FTP, using a layman's way of understanding that. Right? So SFTP is there. So we have now this program. If you want to look at this program again, one of the unfortunate things is with a tool like Notepad++, we cannot edit the program directly on the server. So we have downloaded, edit the program, and upload it again. Right? So that's let's try to do that. So I'm opening up my Notepad++, and I can open the program. It's on my desktop, and now you can see Oracle PHP 5. Open it up. So this is a program that we mentioned that already. And if you see line number A, it says spring 2018. Let's change that to 2020. This is not spring, it's fall semester. Time flying really fast. Fall 2000. Oh. F-A-L-L. All right, so I do have trouble typing using this keyboard. Right, so that changed to fall 2020. And this one, line number 11 is important. As you can see that the connection is rendered through a user called TWNG22, a password called Oracle, and a connection string here. Right? This is a new current, I should not say new, the current connection string to connect to Oracle server. The old one is only oracle.uis.edu, but the new one contain the UIS sort of like server name in there. So this is our connection. So this is important. Make sure that you have, if you follow the tutorial and type in the program by yourself, make sure you replace the line number 11 with this particular one. And the other important thing is that you don't need to change anything in your assignment number 9 if you use this program. This program can be found on your Canvas system. If you go into module number 5, and you can find this little program here, right here. All right, so at the end of module number 5, you have this Oracle PHP 5.php. You can download it anywhere you run the program. What you need to do is that you need to issue a query right here. The query in line number 17. Embed your query in line number 17. So whatever query you get in there, you get a result, and you will be able to see the table on the web page, right? So to demonstrate that, let me open up some of the things you may already forgot that we used earlier in the semester. Called the SQL Developer. Now let me kind of refresh your memory a little bit by opening up SQL Developer. A lot of waiting using or introduce program in the real time. If I have a research assistant, I'm going to be asking him to edit my recording, so cut off this waiting time, so you can have shorter recording and upload to the, or even cut it shorter, cut off all the talking that professor has done and create a short version, just capture the important step and then go ahead and do it. But of course, listen to me as I try to explain to you the technology details and how the thing work together. Hope that's more educational or helpful in learning. Let's go ahead and click yes, no, or the only option is no actually there to open up SQL Developer. And that's issue query here. And usually what we do is we issue query here, test the query before we actually test our program. So make sure the query works before you use the computer program to render the result. So, and of course, we need to make connection. Okay, let's call this UIS Oracle server. See. Username, my username, password, Oracle, and I need to connect to oracle.uis.edu. The SID is Oracle. All right, so let's save it and test and connect. Great. I'm amazed. Usually I will make some mistake during the process myself. Even though I developed the entire thing myself, I just make this mistake. All right, so anyway, so take a look at how many table I have. I mean, different user, including you, will have different table. But minimally, you should have something like the inventory, something that you go through from chapter number 2, right? And as you can probably see, I have Titanic 1, Titanic 2, Titanic 3. And the reason being that if you don't see your Titanic table, you have to import a table in there. So you have to somehow try to, what I'm doing here is right-click the tables and import data, right? So this, and you can download your Titanic table here and import that in there, and make sure that I think you've done that. So you can see that, do that very easy. Let me leave this as one little technical trouble for you to figure out. So this is Titanic table, and you can see that we have passenger, class, sex or gender, age group, survivor, and the data looks something like this. Okay, so we do have the table there, and look at this query here. It says select count. Let me just copy this query. And put this in my query environment. Right, so this is the query. You can see much better from the Oracle SQL environment. So select this from Titanic 2. Oh, I'm not using Titanic 1, I'm using Titanic 2. So where survivor is yes, group by class, sex, age, and age group, order by count. Right, so that changes to no. Try to find out those passenger who died in the Titanic disaster. Right, so that's just and we can test it. Well, the result is something like this. So you have crew first and second, then 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So that's supposed to be the result. Right? So let's go to our program. And so this little program worked, but I want to change this to no. So instead of finding the survivor, I'm finding the dead list, what we call this, victim list, and save the program. So this is still Oracle 5, and let me close this. And what I would do here is that I have this. Remember the file browser or file manager I have opened up here, actually connecting to the server. If you can see the path is on the server. Let me delete the one on the server. And now I do not have Oracle PHP 5. And now I have this Oracle PHP 5, just edit and copy and move that to the server. So I have the new version. This is, make sure you have the current version in there. Otherwise, because they have the same file name, sometimes you lost track, you forgot which one is the newest version. Now, in a more sophisticated environment like Dreamweavers or Visual Studio.net, you don't need to worry about which version is the correct one because you can add it directly in the web server. But in this case, we cannot. So we will do this manual FTP uploading structure. So now we upload this to a web page. Then we get out of a virtual desktop and go back to our little program here. So this will be Oracle PHP 5 here. Right. So if I run this program, you see that I have this table. If you compare this table, take a kind of mental screenshot, and go back to our SQL developer and look at this table here, this result here, 1 to 10. There's no first row number, but 3, 4, 13, 17. Double check. 3, 4, 7, 13, 17. So now what we have achieved in here is we take the query that you have learned so hard in a DBA environment, or not DBA environment, sorry, the database environment to a user environment. So now any user, anybody, a public in this case, can access to the server. And this program still has some problem. You see that I don't want these lines to show up there, right? So you can actually get rid of them. So resource ID number 3, resource ID number 4. These lines are actually here. I need to use SQL, and you can change this in here. These lines are actually here. You have already connected to Oracle database is right here. Right? So let's leave this in here. If you don't want this line to show up, you can just get rid of this and just leave it blank, and get rid of the P tag in there, so we're blank. Let me just say change this to, here is your dead list. Dead list. Okay, dead list. Just call this dead list because we have no there. And the resource ID is actually here on line number 26 when I echo a connection. So this is actually a resource. Let me get rid of that. And there will be another one, echo something. Echo, let me try to find echo. Other than connection, what else I echoed? I echoed the SQL parser. Okay. Oh, SQL ID, I echoed this one. So let me get rid of both of them. All right, and save the file. You don't need to close the file. You just save the file. And this is the same file that we saved. Now this time I'm gonna upload it and replace it. All right, so replace the new file. And we go back to the program, refresh the page. I get rid of those resource line. This is here's your dead list. Now we achieved the assignment number 9 already. Okay, so that's pretty much what you need to do in assignment number 9. But the difference is that the query I asked you to issue is different from this one. All right, so try to see what query I asked you to issue and change that query every semester so you know that I know that if you copy from your previous classmate who has already taken this class or not, right? So that is the entire process. And module 5B is actually using this JavaScript program. And this is another open source program, just to entertain your curiosity. It's called the chartjs.org. Actually, you know what? Go to the homepage. And what we are doing there, we just download their applications. So this is a open source JavaScript program or package, allow you to build all kind of a nice, interesting looking chart, including this animation chart. You see this little thing bubble running around? And you may be curious about something like this happen, right? So this is our current election results showing up in this little bubble, and this look like it's actually animate. Whenever you refresh it, it will jump around and animate. Right. It's a little bit slow, but yeah. So, I don't know why it refresh. It just crashed. This is the NPR website. This is not my fault. This is NPR website's fault. All right, but anyway, you can actually do those in here, similar using this program, new in 2.0. So just without actually going through the process of how to use them, because that's written in 5B. If you're interested, you can take a look at. And if you're a website builder, you can use this to free. It's free to make your website dynamic and pretty and very easy. All right, so let's look at what we have here, and they have some program here. Let me just open up some of the example they have already put on my server. So I'm going to be changing my URL to chart.js dash master slash sample slash pi dot html. So it shows up as a pie chart, right? So let me go back to the server. What I'm doing here, I access the sample. So I have assignment 11 that was from previous. I actually asked the student to do this. Donuts chart, color, line customer toolpath. So what you need to do is to modify this HTML page. Maybe you can insert some PHP program and make this yours, right? So polar area, let's take a look at polar area.html. So you can change the name of polar area.html. All right, so that's the chart, kind of very interesting dynamic chart. And you hover up, you can see some information there. So those are the things that you can actually very easily done and embed it in your programs or web page, and pretty amazing what you can do with the free stuff, and without too much programming training. So that's what I have for you in module number 5. So again, go ahead and try module 5B. If you don't have time now, I will encourage you to make sure that you keep all the tutorial files on your own computer, that when you finish up the class and when you have a need in your job, or when you have the need to impress your boss, your employers, interviewers, and colleagues, and whatever, you can use this technology. That's kind of helpful. They can do they can access this easily from their cell phone anywhere. Right, so that's pretty much what I have for today's lecture, and go through the entire process of showing you how to do assignment number 9. And any question?
So Professor, these files you're talking about, they would be available after the semester in Canvas. So for the module 5B.
So what about module 5B? It's the
You
resources.
said, yeah, resources, those files, anything, they would be
Yeah,
available after
it's
the
in your
semester.
module number 5, right? 5B here, and the chart
Okay.
chart.js, I already downloaded this in here for you. You can also use because
Okay.
the reason I keep this a copy of the JavaScript master folder here is because the chart.js, they update their application very often. So if I use because the tutorial is built on that version, I just uploaded there. If you use their version, then you have to learn a little bit, customize a little, because their chart will be different. So you have to go to GitHub to download their folder. So this is the GitHub folder. Download the code here. So similar. So we have the sample folder. You can probably see that it also has charts, different folder structure. So they have a bubble chart, they have combo chart, a donut chart, pie chart, photo chart. So these are there in the chart.js folder, and you can download from there directly. But the folder structure might be different, so that may work 100% correctly with the tutorial. But the file you download from my folder will be 100% compatible. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so that's a tutorial there, just to give you a little bit the preview. So it's using the chart tutorial to kind of building chart. It actually give you some introduction about what they are, some of the, and this is interesting. And actually, I want to talk about this when we get into module number 6, when we talk about BI and the big data era. So there's something we can take a look at. So basically, it's the same process, but you have to, if you go through this by yourself, probably 2-3 hours, maybe a little more, to iron out the errors, and the process I just showed you using Swish, and that's also there. You can learn how to build chart, and the Titanic data can be show up in your pie chart. That's how it looks like, right? So, so that's about it, and not kind of a very difficult thing to do, but do have some technical glitch, or not glitch, hurdle, a few technical hurdle you have to iron out before you can make them work. That's the nature of technology. Once you know which button to click, technology become very simple. Right? So I think that we already learned that as a graduate student in MIS. You know that that's pretty much like that. Right? So, and again, minimal programming. And using the Apex, the programming part is even smaller. So you don't need to learn a PHP, or just using the application building tool in Apex will be good enough, right? So next time, maybe that you can uh, run your local elections and build one of this using the chart.js, if you want to, by yourself, and impress your friends on Facebook. I wonder why their website crashed after I reload. Now it's working much correctly, so it's much better. So that's the way it is, and I will stop the recording here and share with everybody so you can work on your next week's assignment. And the week after we have user management, and very quickly we go into Thanksgiving and almost we need to wrap it up and with your project. And now we in the future we have more open up more well by request. If you need help, we're going to be setting up new Zoom meeting for working on your project or small talk on how to make your project better.